Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever read a book or maybe just listened to someone tell a story and you suddenly realize, wait a second, the very person telling me this tale is completely manipulating me? It's kind of a thrilling but also a deeply unsettling realization, right? Well, today we are diving headfirst into the concept of the unreliable narrator. We're going to look at exactly how master authors trick our minds, and then we're going to see what happens when those exact same literary tricks spill over into a massive, real-life historical mystery. Just to give you a quick roadmap for today, we're going to cover Section 1, the unreliable narrator, Section 2, the art of omission, and Section 3, the complex liar. Then we are going to pivot straight into real life with Section 4, reality imitates fiction, Section 5, the 11-day mystery, and finally, Section 6, master plan or breakdown.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the unreliable narrator, how authors trick our minds.
All right, let's put on our literary analysis hats for a second. We're looking at two absolute masterpieces of deception that literally revolutionize how narrators lie to us. We've got Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd from 1926 and Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita from 1955. Now, both of these novels lean heavily on a narrator whose version of the truth is, well, highly suspect. But they go about deceiving us in fascinatingly different ways.
To really understand how they pull this off, we need a quick look at the academic side of things. According to literary theorists Tamar Jacobi and Bruno Zurwek, unreliability isn't just some static feature sitting there on the page. It's actually a cognitive framework. It's like a giant puzzle, a game played between the author and you. As you're reading, you start catching inconsistencies, or maybe you notice these weird gaping holes in the story. And then you have to actively make the choice to attribute those gaps to the narrator intentionally messing with the transmission of the story. The unreliability literally lives right there in your interpretation of the clues.
Moving right along to Section 2, the art of omission, Dr. Shepard's calculated silence.
So, to see how this builds, let's examine Agatha Christie's prime suspect, Dr. James Shepard. First off, how does a narrator actually lie? Well, literary theorist Amit Marcus breaks it down into two simple categories. You have self-deceptive narrators. These are characters who honestly don't even realize they're lying. Their perception of reality is just genuinely distorted. But then you have other deceptive narrators. These are your master manipulators. They intentionally lie, they conceal facts, all to trick you. And Dr. Shepard? He is a total masterclass in being purely, coldly, other deceptive. He leverages his respectable position as a nice, friendly village doctor to build up this immense trust with us, all while very carefully hiding his true, dark nature.
Seriously, listen to this exact moment from the novel. Dr. Shepard is leaving the room of his friend, Roger Ackroyd. He tells us, "The letter had been brought in. I hesitated with my hand on the door handle." Sounds like a totally normal, everyday description, right? But think about the blank space between those two sentences. In the literal, unwritten gap between a letter being brought in and him touching the door handle, Dr. Shepard murders Roger Ackroyd. He doesn't technically lie, he just totally omits the actual murder. It is the ultimate act of omission, brilliantly hidden behind the comforting, authoritative voice of a medical professional. Absolutely wild.
Now for Section 3, the complex liar, intellectualizing deception.
Let's shift gears completely and look at Vladimir Nabokov's deeply disturbing protagonist, Humbert Humbert. Academic James Phelan gives us another brilliant way to look at this. He divides unreliability into bonding and estranging effects. Bonding unreliability does exactly what it sounds like. It draws you in. It makes you feel close to the narrator, maybe even tricking you into feeling a bit of misguided sympathy or trust. Estranging unreliability, on the other hand, violently pushes you away by dropping these horrific, alienating truths. And what makes Humbert Humbert such an incredibly complex liar is that he wildly oscillates between the two. He constantly pushes you away with his monstrous actions, and then he desperately tries to pull you back in, just completely scrambling your moral compass.
And he uses some very specific calculated manipulation tactics to pull this off. He actually speaks directly to you, constantly invoking the learned reader to make you feel like you're his intellectual accomplice. He feigns this totally passive role, claiming he displayed supreme stupidity, just to make it seem like he wasn't really the one in control. Disgustingly, he even tries to shift the blame onto his young victim. But his ultimate weapon is intellectualization. He uses these dry, psychoanalytical terms to distance himself from his own horrific crimes, famously claiming at one point that he's not even concerned with so-called sex at all. He is literally gaslighting you by hiding his atrocities behind a giant wall of highbrow vocabulary.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 4, Reality imitates fiction, the queen of crime's own mystery.
So we've seen how narrators manipulate the truth in fiction, but what happens when the author herself becomes the unreliable protagonist of her very own life? Listen to this haunting, carefully worded confession from Agatha Christie herself, given to the Daily Mail in 1928. She said, "When I reached a point on the road which I thought was near the quarry, I left the wheel and let the car run. Up to this moment, I was Mrs. Christie." Wow, that is a chilling confession about the traumatic night her entire life completely shattered.
Which poses a truly fascinating question. Did the Queen of Crime engineer her own real-life mystery? Now, we are going to take the exact literary theories we just learned about, the other deceptive narrator, the self-deceptive narrator, the art of omission, and apply them to one of the most famous events of the 20th century, Agatha Christie's unbelievable disappearance in 1926.
Section 5. The 11-Day Mystery, a real-life manhunt.
Let's set the historical scene here. It's 1926, and Agatha Christie is honestly having a horrific year. Her beloved mother has just recently died, leaving her absolutely reeling, basically prone to forgetting her own name. And to make matters vastly worse, her husband Archie, who is apparently obsessed with playing golf, abruptly announces he wants a divorce so he can be with his mistress, a woman named Nancy Neal. So here's the timeline of what goes down next. On December 3rd, Archie leaves the house. That same evening, Agatha drives off into the night, leaving her car abandoned and dangling dangerously over the edge of a chalk quarry. By December 4th, her disappearance is global front-page news, sparking a massive nationwide search. Fast forward to December 14th and 15th, 11 whole days later, and she is finally found. And where is she? She's hiding in plain sight. She's casually reading the newspapers and dancing the Charleston at a luxury spa in Yorkshire. You literally can't make this stuff up.
To really grasp how baffling this all was, you have to understand the sheer, absurd scale of the search while she was chilling at that spa. It was a complete circus. 500 police officers were deployed. They used airplanes, which was literally a first in England, and sniffer bloodhounds. Up to 15,000 civilian volunteers were out scouring the countryside. Even other famous authors got involved. Fellow mystery writer Dorothy L. Sayers was out there searching for clues, and Sherlock Holmes creator Arthur Conan Doyle actually took one of Christie's gloves to a psychic to divine her location. The entire country was in an absolute frenzy, all while Christie was quietly dining under an assumed name.
Moving to our final part, Section 6, Master Plan or Breakdown, Analyzing the Evidence.
Let's step back into our detective role here and really weigh the evidence. Was this a calculated revenge master plan or a tragic mental breakdown? Well, if it was a hoax, meaning she was acting as an other deceptive narrator of her own life, the evidence is pretty strong. She brought a well-stocked money belt, she clearly had the funds to pay for a luxury spa, and she pointedly checked in using the fake name Teresa Neal. Sound familiar? Yeah, she intentionally stole the surname of her husband's mistress. But if it was genuine trauma, making her a self-deceptive narrator, we see a completely different side. She genuinely failed to recognize her own photo in the newspapers. When her husband finally arrived to get her, she introduced him as her brother. And medical doctors at the time formally diagnosed her with psychogenic amnesia, which is a very real type of memory loss brought on by extreme stress.
So what's the truth? Well, as researchers have pieced together, it likely doesn't fit neatly into just one simple box. She wasn't some criminal mastermind perfectly executing a flawless Dr. Shepard-style plot straight out of Roger Ackroyd. But she was, in her own words, in a state of high nervous strain. It was highly likely this really erratic mix. She probably had moments of absolute clarity, where she coldly planned a trip to Yorkshire, which was then followed by a traumatic car crash that triggered genuine psychogenic amnesia. The result? Completely bizarre, contradictory behavior that absolutely baffled the world. And so, we leave you with this final, provocative thought. We know exactly how master authors manipulate their readers on the page, but when Agatha Christie's own life shattered and she stepped into the spotlight of a massive, global mystery, was she a self-deceptive victim tragically broken by grief? Or was she, for those 11 remarkable days, the ultimate other deceptive narrator, perfectly playing the public and leaving behind a mystery that we are quite literally still debating almost a century later? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we really hope this leaves you questioning the next narrator you meet.